I was having one of those ordinary days, the kind where everything seems to flow just as it should. I decided to grab a coffee at the corner cafe before heading to work. The morning rush was in full swing, with people bustling around, lost in their routines. As I sipped my coffee, I overheard a conversation between two women sitting at the table next to me. At first, I wasn't paying much attention, but then I caught a snippet that made my heart skip a beat. Can you believe it? She actually said that her cuckold husband didn't even realize he was being cheated out of money, one of the women said, her voice dripping with amusement. The second woman laughed out loud. Some people are just so oblivious, it is almost impressive. My hand tightened around my coffee cup, the ceramic almost slipping from my grasp. They couldn't be talking about me, could they? But the more I listened, the more I felt the sting of betrayal. It was like they were describing my life in brutal detail, right down to the way my wife Emily had always managed our finances. I didn't wait to hear more. I stood up abruptly, my mind racing. I left the cafe, my coffee forgotten on the table, and pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled as I dialed Emily's number. "Hey, honey," she answered, her voice cheerful and unsuspecting. "Come home right now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "or I'll be so cruel you'll want to cut me out of your life immediately." There was a pause. "What? What are you talking about? Just come home, Emily, now." I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding in my chest. As I drove home, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. I tried to make sense of the snippets of conversation I had overheard. Could it really be true? Had Emily been cheating on me, and with our money? When I got home, I paced the living room, waiting for Emily. The minutes felt like hours. Finally, I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway. She walked in looking confused and a bit worried. "What's going on, Derek?" she asked, setting her purse down on the kitchen counter. "I overheard something today," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "Something about you and our money, about you cheating on me." Her face went pale. "What? Who said that? Does it matter? I want the truth, Emily, now." For a moment, she just stood there looking at me with wide eyes. Then she took a deep breath and sat down at the kitchen table. "All right, Derek, let us talk." I sat down across from her, my heart aching with a mix of anger, betrayal, and confusion. This was just the beginning, I realized, the beginning of a story I never thought would be mine. As I sat across from Emily, my mind was reeling. I couldn't believe this was happening. The woman I had loved and trusted was about to reveal the truth that could shatter everything we had built together. She took a deep breath, avoiding my eyes. "Derek, I never wanted to hurt you," she began, her voice trembling. "But I guess I have some things to confess." I leaned forward, my fists clenched on the table. "Just tell me, Emily, how long has this been going on?" Emily looked down at her hands, which were nervously twisting a napkin. "It started about 6 months ago. I met him at the gym. His name is Mark." My heart sank. Mark, a name that would forever be etched into my memory as the symbol of my wife's betrayal. "So you've been seeing him behind my back for 6 months?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be serious. It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far. Did you love him?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear the answer. "No," she said quickly. "It was never about love. It was just an escape, a way to feel something different, but it is over now, Derek. I ended it." I felt a flicker of anger ignite in my chest. "And the money? What's this about me being cheated out of money?" Emily's face flushed with shame. "Mark was having financial troubles. He convinced me to lend him some money. I thought I was helping a friend, but what?" I demanded. "My patience wearing thin, but I took it from our savings without telling you." She admitted, her voice breaking. "I am so sorry, Derek. I was going to pay it back, but then things got out of hand." I stood up abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. I paced the kitchen, running my hands through my hair. "So let me get this straight. You cheated on me with some guy from the gym, and then you gave him our money. How could you do this to us, Emily? To me?" She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I don't know, Derek. I don't know what I was thinking. I was selfish and stupid, but I love you. I never stopped loving you." I stopped pacing and stared at her, my heart torn between anger and the remnants of the love I once felt. Love? You call this love? You betrayed me, Emily. You lied to me every day for 6 months. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. I'll do anything to make this right, Derek. I'll pay back every cent. I'll go to therapy, whatever it takes. Just please don't give up on us. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. This was too much to process. I need time to think, I said finally. I need to figure out what I want to do. Right now I can even look at you. She nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. Take all the time you need. I left the kitchen, heading upstairs to our bedroom. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, had been turned upside down, and I had no idea where to go from here. This was only the beginning of the emotional betrayal. The real challenge would be deciding what to do next and how to deal with the heartache and trust issues that would inevitably follow. As I lay down on the bed, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days passed in a blur. I took some time off work, claiming I needed to deal with a personal emergency. In reality, I was just trying to wrap my head around what had happened. Emily and I barely spoke. She gave me space, probably sensing that any attempt to talk would only result in more anger and hurt. One evening, I decided to clear my head by going for a long drive. As I cruised through the quiet, dark streets, my mind raced with a mix of memories and questions. How had I missed the signs? Had our entire marriage been a lie? The radio played softly in the background, but I barely heard it over the storm of thoughts in my mind. I ended up at a small park on the edge of town. It was a place Emily and I used to visit often when we first started dating. Sitting on a bench by the pond, I stared at the reflection of the moon on the water, feeling a profound sense of loss. As I sat there, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw a text from my best friend, Mike. Hey man, haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? I debated whether or not to respond. Mike was the kind of friend who always had my back, but I wasn't sure I was ready to share what I was going through. In the end, I typed a quick reply. Not really. Can we meet up? A few minutes later, he replied, Of course. Where are you? I sent him the location of the park, and about 30 minutes later, his car pulled up. Mike got out and walked over, concerned etched on his face. Hey, Derek, he said, sitting down next to me. What's going on? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Emily has been cheating on me for 6 months. Mike's eye is widened and shocked. What? Are you serious? I knotted the lump in my throat, making it hard to speak, and that is not all. She gave our money to the guy she was seeing without telling me. He shook his head, looking out at the pond. Jesus, Derek, I don't even know what to say. I don't see either, I admitted. I feel like my whole world has fallen apart. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. Mike was silent for a moment. Then he put a hand on my shoulder. Look, man, I can imagine what you're going through, but I know you. You're one of the strongest people I know. You'll get through this. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Mike. It means a lot. Have you thought about what you want to do? He asked. Are you going to stay with her? Try to work things out? I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me wants to try and fix things, but another part of me just wants to walk away and never look back. Mike nodded. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Just know that you don't have to go through this alone. We sat there in silence for a while, the cool night air wrapping around us. It was comforting to have Mike there. And if he didn't have all the answers, just knowing that someone cared was enough to keep me from feeling completely lost. When I finally got home that night, Emily was sitting on the couch looking small and defeated. She glanced up at me, her eyes pleading. Did you go out to think? She asked softly. I nodded. I met up with Mike, told him everything. She looked down, her fingers twisting nervously. And what did he say? He asked there for me, whatever I decide to do, I replied, sitting down across from her. Emily, I need to know one thing. Why? Why did you do it? She took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. I wish I could give you a simple answer, Derek. I felt like I was missing something in my life. But it was a mistake, a huge mistake. I realize now that what I was missing was you. I took you for granted, and I am so sorry. I rubbed my temples, feeling the weight of her words. I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet, at least. I understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. But I know it's going to take time. As I headed upstairs to the guest room, where I had been sleeping since the revelation, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to rebuild. But it would be a long, painful journey, and the outcome was far from certain. This was just the beginning of the fallout from Emily S. Patrail. The next steps would be crucial in determining whether our marriage could survive or if it was truly the end. The days following my conversation with Emily were tense and awkward. We moved around each other like strangers, each of us lost in our thoughts. I continued to sleep in the guest room, needing the physical and emotional distance to sort through my feelings. Emily made a point to be home whenever I was, but she gave me space, perhaps realizing that anything else might push me further away. One evening, as I sat in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, I decided I needed more than just time to think. I needed clarity. I grabbed my laptop and started looking up therapists in the area. I found one who specialized in couples counseling and individual therapy. I made an appointment for the following week. The first session was nerve-wracking. As I walked into the therapist's office, I felt a mix of hope and dread. Dr. Harris, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, welcomed me and gestured for me to sit. So, Derek, she began, her voice gentle, what brings you here today? I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. My wife, she cheated on me for 6 months, and she gave our money to the guy she was seeing. Dr. Harris nodded, her expression sympathetic. That must be incredibly painful. How are you coping with everything? I don't know, I admitted. I feel like my whole world has been turned upside down. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. Trust is a fundamental part of any relationship, she said. When it is as broken, it can be very difficult to repair, but it's not impossible. Have you and your wife discussed what happened? We've talked a bit, I said. She has apologized and said she wants to make things right, but I'm not sure if I can move past this. Dr. Harris leaned forward slightly. It's important to take things one step at a time. Healing from this kind of betrayal will take time, patience, and a lot of work from both of you. Would you be open to couples counseling as well? I hesitated. The idea of sitting in a room with Emily, discussing our problems with a stranger, felt daunting. But I also knew that if there was any chance of saving our marriage, we needed help. Yes, I said finally. I think that might be a good idea. We scheduled a couple session for the following week. As I left the therapist's office, I felt a small sense of relief. It wasn't too much, but it was a step forward. That evening, I sat down with Emily at the kitchen table. I have started seeing a therapist, I told her. I think we should do couples counseling, too. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. I did like that, Derek. I'll do whatever it takes. The week leading up to our first couple session was a mixture of tension and tentative attempts at normalcy. We tried to have dinner together, talked about mundane things like work and errands, but there was always an undercurrent of unresolved pain and mistrust. When the day of the session arrived, we walked into Dr. Harris's office together. She greeted us warmly and invited us to sit. So, Derek and Emily, she began, I understand there's been a significant breach of trust in your relationship. Today, we're going to start the process of addressing that and finding a way to move forward. Emily looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I am so sorry, Derek. I know I've hurt you deeply. I want to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I appreciate that, Emily, I said, my voice strained. But it's going to take a lot of time and effort. I'm not sure if I can ever fully trust you again. Dr. Harris nodded. Rebuilding trust is a long process. It requires honesty, transparency, and a willingness to address the underlying issues that led to the betrayal. Emily, what made you turn to someone else? Emily took a deep breath, wiping away her tears. I felt like something was missing in my life. I didn't know how to talk to Derek about it, and instead of facing my feelings, I made a terrible mistake. I know that's not an excuse. It is just what happened. And Derek, Dr. Harris said, turning to me, how did you feel when you found out? I clenched my hands into fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. I felt betrayed, angry, and confused. It is like everything I thought I knew about our relationship was a lie. Dr. Harris nodded. Those feelings are completely valid. It is important to acknowledge them and to communicate openly about them. Healing will require both of you to be vulnerable and honest with each other. The session was emotionally draining, but it also felt like a step in the right direction. As we left the office, Emily reached for my hand. I hesitated, then took it. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a tentative promise to try and move forward, no matter how difficult it might be. Back at home, we sat together on the couch. The silence between us no longer is heavy. "Thank you for agreeing to the counseling," Emily said softly. "I know it's going to be hard, but I believe we can get through this." I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "Yeah, me too. It's not going to be easy, but I am willing to try." As we sat there, I realized that the path to healing would be long and challenging. But for the first time since the revelation, I felt a glimmer of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild what had been broken. The weeks following our first counseling session were some of the most challenging of my life. Emily and I continued to see Dr. Harris, both together and separately. Each session was a deep dive into our emotions, forcing us to confront the pain, anger, and confusion head-on. It was exhausting, but I started to see glimpses of progress. One evening, after a particularly tough session, Emily and I sat in the living room, both of us emotionally spent. I looked at her, seeing the weariness in her eyes, and realized how much this was taking a toll on both of us. "How are you holding up?" I asked, breaking the silence. She gave me a small, tired smile. "It's as hard, Derek, but I know this is necessary. I hope you can forgive me someday." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I'm trying, Emily. It's just going to take time. In addition to therapy, we started implementing some of the exercises Dr. Harris suggested. One was a daily check-in where we would share our feelings and thoughts without judgment or interruption. It was awkward at first, but gradually it became a way for us to reconnect. One night during our check-in, Emily hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about why I did what I did," she began, "and I realize now that I was running away from my own fears and insecurities. It wasn't about you. It was about me not feeling good enough, not being able to communicate what I needed." I listened, trying to understand her perspective. "I wish you had talked to me," I said. "We could have worked through it together." "I know," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I was scared. But I see now that keeping things inside only made everything worse. Another part of our healing process was rebuilding trust. Emily agreed to be completely transparent about her activities. She shared her phone and email passwords with me and let me know where she was going and who she was with at all times. It felt strange, almost invasive, but it was necessary for me to start feeling secure again. There were moments of tension and doubt, especially when I saw reminders of her affair. Seeing her phone light up with a text or an email would send a jolt of anxiety through me. But I tried to remind myself that trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight. It was a process, and it required patience from both of us. One weekend, we decided to take a short trip to the mountains. It was a place we had always loved, full of happy memories. As we hiked through the trails and sat by the lake, I felt some of the tension ease. Being away from the daily grind and in nature helped us reconnect in a way we hadn't in a long time. On the last night of our trip, we sat by a campfire, the crackling flames casting a warm glow on Emily's face. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Derek, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking you to give me another chance. I want to rebuild our marriage and make it stronger than before." I stared into the fire, the flames dancing as if mirroring the turmoil inside me. "I want to believe that we can get through this," I said slowly, "but it's going to take a lot of time and effort from both of us." She nodded, her expression resolute. "I am willing to do whatever it takes. I love you, Derek, and I am committed to making things right." We sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Despite everything, there was a small part of me that still loved Emily, that still wanted to believe in us. As we packed up the next day and headed back home, I felt a cautious optimism. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a while, I felt like we might just have a chance. Back at home, life resumed its complicated dance. We continued our counseling sessions and daily check-ins, slowly rebuilding the foundation of our relationship. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I felt like giving up, but each time I reminded myself of the commitment we made to each other and to our future. One evening, after another long day, I found a note from Emily on the kitchen counter. It was simple, but it brought tears to my eyes. "Derek, I know I have hurt you more than words can express, but I believe in us. I believe we can come out of this stronger. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove it. I love you, Emily." As I read the note, I felt a flicker of hope. It wouldn't be easy, and there were no guarantees. But as long as we were both willing to put in the effort, there was a possibility of healing and a chance at a future together. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like we were on the right path. The struggle to rebuild our marriage would continue, but with each step forward, we were slowly finding our way back to each other. Despite the progress Emily and I were making, there were still moments of intense doubt and temptation. Every time I saw a text message or email on her phone, a wave of anxiety would wash over me. I constantly battled with the urge to check her messages, even though she had given me full access to her devices. The trust that had been shattered was being slowly rebuilt, but it was fragile, and any misstep could send it crumbling down again. One Friday night, I went out with Mike and some other friends to a bar we used to frequent. It was the first time I had gone out without Emily since everything happened, and I was looking forward to just relaxing and having a good time. The bar was packed, the music was loud, and for the first time in a while, I felt a sense of normalcy. We found a table in the corner and ordered a round of drinks. As we talked and laughed, I felt some of the tension begin to melt away. It was good to be surrounded by friends who cared about me, who wanted to see me happy. About an hour in, I noticed a woman at the bar who kept glancing in my direction. She was attractive, with long, dark hair and a confident smile. I tried to ignore her, but every time I looked up, she was staring at me. Finally, she walked over to our table. "Hi," she said, her voice smooth and inviting. "Mind if I join you?" Mike raised an eyebrow, glancing at me for a cue. I shrugged, not wanting to be rude. "Sure, why not?" I pulled up a chair and introduced herself as Sarah. As the conversation flowed, I learned she was recently divorced and was out celebrating her newfound freedom. She was charming and flirtatious, and it didn't take long for me to feel a spark of attraction. "Can I buy you a drink?" she asked, leaning in closer. I hesitated. The temptation was strong, but I knew what was at stake. I appreciated it, but I should probably head home soon. She pouted playfully. "Come on, just one drink. It's not like you were married or anything, right?" The question hit me like a punch. I realized she had noticed my empty ring finger. I had taken my wedding ring off after Emily S.'s betrayal and had yet to put it back on. I felt a pang of guilt. "Actually, I am," I said, my voice firmer than I expected, "and I'm trying to work things out with my wife." Sarah S.'s smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Well, that S too bad. If you change your mind, you know where to find me." As she walked away, Mike clapped me on the shoulder. "Good call, man. You don't need that kind of complication right now." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and regret. The temptation had been real, and it had been strong, but I had made the right choice. I needed to stay focused on my commitment to Emily and our efforts to rebuild our marriage. When I got home, Emily was waiting up for me, a book in her lap. She looked up as I walked in, a mixture of curiosity and anxiety in her eyes. "How was your night?" "It was good," I said, sitting down next to her. "Saw some old friends, had a few drinks." She hesitated, then asked, "Did anything happen?" I looked into her eyes, seeing the fear and vulnerability there. "A woman tried to hit on me," I said honestly, "but I told her I was married and that I was working things out with you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for being honest with me, Derek. It means a lot." I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We are in this together, Emily. I am committed to making this work." That night, as we lay in bed, I thought about the choice I had made. It hadn't been easy, but it felt right. Every day was a struggle, a constant battle between doubt and trust, between hurt and hope. But as long as we both kept fighting, there was a chance for us to rebuild what had been broken. The following week, during one of our sessions with Dr. Harris, I brought up the incident at the bar. I was tempted, I admitted, but I chose not to act on it. I want to be honest about my feelings and struggles. Dr. Harris nodded approvingly. Temptation is a normal part of life, especially after such a significant breach of trust. It's important to acknowledge it and to make conscious choices that align with your values and commitments. Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you for being honest, Derek. I know this isn't easy for you. It is not, I agreed, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild our marriage. As we continued our therapy, we started to see more progress. Our communication improved and the daily check-ins became more natural. We were slowly rebuilding the foundation of trust, brick by brick. It was a long and difficult process, but every small step forward felt like a victory. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Emily turned to me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our future." I looked at her, my heart pounding. "What about it?" "I want us to renew our vows," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Not right away, but when we're ready. I want to make a new commitment to each other, to show that we were stronger than ever." The idea filled me with a mix of hope and apprehension. "I'd like that," I said finally, "when the time is right." As the weeks turned into months, we continued to work on our relationship, taking things one day at a time. There were still moments of doubt and temptation, but each time we chose to fight for our marriage, and with each choice, we grew stronger together. The months of therapy and hard work began to pay off. Emily and I were finally starting to find our rhythm again. The daily check-ins became a time of genuine connection, and our communication improved significantly. We were not just talking, but really listening to each other. One day, as we sat in Dr. Harris's office, she remarked on our progress. "You two have come a long way," she said, smiling warmly. "I see a lot of growth and commitment from both of you." Emily and I exchanged a glance, a small but meaningful smile passing between us. It felt good to hear that, to know our efforts were making a difference. After the session, Emily suggested we go out for lunch. We found a cozy little cafe and settled into a corner booth. As we ate, we talked about everything and nothing, just enjoying each other's company. It felt like the early days of our relationship when everything was new and exciting. As we were finishing our meal, Emily reached across the table and took my hand. "Derek, I've been thinking a lot about our future, about what we want and where we are headed." I nodded, squeezing her hand. "Me too. I feel like we are finally starting to get back on track." She smiled, her eyes bright. "I've been talking to Dr. Harris about the possibility of us taking a trip together, just the two of us away from everything. I think it could be a good way to reconnect and create new memories." The idea intrigued me. A getaway could be just what we needed to solidify the progress we had made. I like that idea. "Where do you think we should go?" "How about the beach?" she suggested. "We always loved our beach vacations. The beach had always been our happy place. The sound of the waves, the feel of the sand between our toes. It was a place where we could relax and just be ourselves." "The beach sounds perfect," I agreed. "Let us do it." We planned our trip for the following month. As the departure date approached, I found myself looking forward to it more and more. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to leave the past behind and focus on the future. When the day finally arrived, we packed our bags and headed to the airport. The flight was short, and before we knew it, we were stepping off the plane and into the warm, salty air. The beach house we had rented was quaint and charming, with a perfect view of the ocean. For the first few days, we did nothing but relax. We walked along the shore hand in hand and spent lazy afternoons lounging in beach chairs, reading and napping. In the evenings, we cooked dinner together and talked late into the night, the sound of the waves providing a soothing backdrop. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "Derek, there is something I want to talk about." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "I know we've come a long way, and I'm so grateful for the progress we've made, but I also know that trust is still a fragile thing for us. I want to make sure we were doing everything we can to rebuild it." I nodded, understanding her concern. "I agree. We've made a lot of progress, but there's still work to be done. Dr. Harris suggested something that I think could help," she continued. She mentioned the idea of a trust-building exercise. It is a way for us to openly share our thoughts and feelings and to reassure each other of our commitment. The idea intrigued me. What kind of exercise? It's called the trust jar, she explained. Every time we do something that builds trust, we put a note in the jar. It can be anything from small gestures to big actions. Over time, we can see the jar fill up and know that we are actively working on rebuilding our trust. I liked the idea. It was tangible, a visible reminder of our efforts. Let us do it, I said, smiling. I think it could be really helpful. The next morning, we bought a glass jar and some small slips of paper. We placed it on the kitchen counter in the beach house and began adding notes to it. Every time one of us did something that built trust, whether it was sharing a vulnerable moment, making a sacrifice, or simply being honest, we wrote it down and added it to the jar. As the days passed, the jar began to fill up. It was a small thing, but it made a big difference. Each note was a step forward, a reminder of our commitment to each other. One night, as we sat on the porch with the jar between us, Emily looked at me with tears in her eyes. Thank you, Derek, for giving us a chance, for fighting for our marriage. I reached across and took her hand, my heart full. Thank you, Emily, for being willing to change, to work through this with me. I love you. I love you too, she whispered. The beach trip turned out to be exactly what we needed. It wasn't just a vacation, it was a turning point. We came back home feeling closer than ever, more determined to keep building on the progress we had made. The trust jar became a permanent fixture in our home. Over time, it filled with hundreds of notes, each one a testament to our efforts and our love. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments of doubt and struggle, but we faced them together. As we moved forward, we continued to grow and heal. We renewed our vows in a small, intimate ceremony on our anniversary, surrounded by close friends and family. It was a celebration of our journey, of the strength and resilience we had found in each other. In the end, the betrayal that had once seemed insurmountable became a part of our story, a chapter that made us stronger. We had faced the darkness and come out the other side, more connected and committed than ever. And as I looked at Emily, my heart full of love and gratitude, I knew that we had not just survived, we had thrived together. After returning from our beach trip, Emily and I settled back into our routine, but with a renewed sense of purpose and connection. The trust jar continued to fill a constant reminder of our efforts and commitment to each other. Life began to feel more stable, more secure as we moved forward together. One evening, a few months after our vow renewal, Emily and I were sitting on the couch sharing a quiet moment after dinner. She was reading a book and I was scrolling through my phone when a message from Mike popped up. "Hey man, we should catch up soon. How about dinner this weekend?" I glanced at Emily. "Mike wants to have dinner this weekend. Do you feel up for it?" She looked up from her book and smiled. "Sure, that sounds nice. It's been a while since we've seen him." We made plans to meet Mike and his girlfriend Jessica at a new restaurant in town. The evening arrived, we dressed up and headed out. The restaurant was cozy and elegant, with dim lighting and a warm atmosphere. We found Mike and Jessica already seated at a corner table, and after exchanging greetings, we settled in for a pleasant evening. As the night progressed, we laughed and shared stories, enjoying the good food and great company. At one point, Mike excused himself to use the restroom, and Jessica leaned in, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Actually, there's something we wanted to tell you," she said, glancing at Mike as he returned. We re-engaged. Emily and I gasped in delight. "Congratulations!" we exclaimed in unison. Mike grinned, holding up Jessica's hand to show off the beautiful engagement ring. "Thanks, guys. We are really excited," he said, beaming. "We wanted you to be the first to know." We spent the rest of the evening celebrating their engagement, toasting to their future happiness. As we left the restaurant, Emily and I walked hand in hand, feeling the warmth of the evening lingering around us. "That was wonderful news," Emily said, her eyes shining. "I am so happy for them." "Me too," I agreed. "They deserve all the happiness in the world." A few days later, as I was sorting through some old papers in our home office, I came across the box that held our original wedding photos. I opened it and started flipping through the pictures, memories of our special day flooding back. Emily walked in and saw me looking at the photos. "Those were good times," she said softly, sitting down next to me. I nodded, a smile tugging at my lips. Yeah, they were. We've been through a lot since then, but I wouldn't trade those memories for anything. We spent the next hour going through the photos together, reminiscing about the past and reflecting on how far we had come. It was a bittersweet reminder of the journey we had been on, but it also filled me with a sense of hope and gratitude for our future. Later that night, as we lay in bed, I found myself thinking about Mike and Jessica S.'s engagement. It brought back memories of when I had proposed to Emily and how much that moment had meant to both of us. An idea began to form in my mind, one that filled me with excitement and anticipation. The next morning, I decided to act on my idea. I called Dr. Harris and explained my plan, seeking her advice and guidance. She listened carefully, then offered her support and encouragement. That sounds like a beautiful idea, Derek. I think it could be a powerful step in your healing journey and a reaffirmation of your commitment to each other. With her encouragement, I began to make plans. I wanted to surprise Emily with a proposal, a way to renew our commitment and celebrate our love. I decided to recreate our first date, which had been a picnic in the park. It was simple, but it held a special place in both our hearts. Over the next week, I secretly gathered everything I needed for the picnic. I made sure to include all of Emily's favorite foods and drinks, and even found a small, beautifully decorated cake to celebrate the occasion. I arranged for a friend to set up the picnic spot ahead of time, ensuring everything would be perfect. On the day of the picnic, I told Emily I had a surprise planned and asked her to dress casually. We drove to the park, and as we walked towards the designated spot, I could see the curiosity and excitement in her eyes. When we arrived at the picnic setup, she gasped in delight. "Derek, this is amazing! You recreated our first date!" she exclaimed, her eyes shining with happiness. I smiled, feeling a rush of love and pride. I wanted to do something special for us to remind us of where we started and how far we have come. We spent the afternoon enjoying the picnic, reminiscing about our first date and talking about our journey together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the park, I took Emily's hand and led her to a spot overlooking the lake. "Emily," I began, my heart pounding with emotion. "These past months have been some of the most challenging of our lives, but through it all, I've realized just how much I love you and how much I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to recommit to you, to us, and to our future together." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a beautiful new ring. "Will you marry me again, Emily? Will you continue this journey with me as my wife and my partner?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Derek, 1,000 times, yes!" I slipped the ring onto her finger and we embraced, feeling the weight of the past lifting as we looked forward to the future. The sunset painted the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink, a perfect backdrop for our moment of renewed commitment. As we stood there, holding each other, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would still be challenges and obstacles to overcome, but I was confident that we could face them together. Our love had been tested and had emerged stronger, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, hand in hand with Emily. Our re-engagement brought a renewed sense of joy and purpose to our lives. Emily and I were more connected than ever, and our friends and family could see the difference. We decided to have a small celebration to mark our renewed commitment, inviting only our closest friends and family. The day of the celebration was filled with excitement and nervous anticipation. We chose to host it at our home, transforming the backyard into a beautiful, intimate space with twinkling fairy lights, lanterns, and fresh flowers. It felt magical, a perfect setting to celebrate our journey and future. As our guests began to arrive, there was an air of warmth and love. Mike and Jessica were among the first to arrive, bringing a bottle of champagne and big smiles. "You too look happier than I have ever seen you," Mike said, clapping me on the shoulder. "I'm really proud of you both." "Thanks, Mike," I said, feeling a swell of gratitude. "We couldn't have done it without the support of friends like you." The celebration continued as more friends and family arrived. Everyone mingled, enjoying the food, drinks, and the festive atmosphere. There was laughter, stories, and a sense of community that made the evening even more special. At one point, Emily and I stood up to make a toast. I tapped my glass to get everyone's attention, and the chatter slowly died down. "First of all, we want to thank you all for being here tonight," I began. looking around at the faces of those who had supported us through our journey. This evening is not just a celebration of our renewed commitment to each other, but also a celebration of the love and support you've shown us. We wouldn't be here without you." Emily smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "We've been through a lot and we've come out stronger on the other side. We are so grateful for the second chance we've been given, and we were excited to continue building our future together." Everyone raised their glasses, cheering and toasting to love, resilience, and new beginnings. It was a moment filled with hope and happiness, a turning point that signaled a brighter future. As the evening wore on, I found myself in a quiet corner of the garden, reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. Emily joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she asked softly. I squeezed her hand, feeling a rush of love. "Sometimes it feels like a dream, but it's real, and it is ours." She leaned her head on my shoulder and we stood there in comfortable silence, watching the guests enjoy the evening. It felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another, filled with possibilities and new adventures. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Our renewed commitment gave us a sense of stability and purpose. We continued to attend therapy sessions with Dr. Harris, focusing on maintaining the progress we had made and addressing any lingering issues. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something." I looked at her, curious. "What is on your mind?" "I want to start a family," she said, her voice filled with both excitement and apprehension. "I know it's a big step, and I understand if you're not ready yet, but it is something I've been thinking about a lot." Her words took me by surprise. The idea of starting a family had been something we talked about early in our marriage, but it had been put on hold as we navigated through our challenges. Now, hearing Emily express her desire to take that step filled me with a mix of emotions. I've thought about it too, I admit it. And I think I'm ready. We've come so far, and I believe we can do this together. Her face lit up with joy. "Really? You mean it?" I nodded, feeling a sense of certainty. "Yes, Emily, I want to start a family with you. Let us take this next step together." We hugged, feeling the weight of the decision and the excitement of what lay ahead. It was a new chapter, one that would bring its own set of challenges and joys, but we were ready to face it together. A few months later, we found out that Emily was pregnant. The news filled us with an overwhelming sense of happiness and anticipation. We shared the news with our friends and family, who celebrated with us, showering us with love and support. As Emily asked pregnancy progressed, we prepared for the arrival of our baby. We turned the guest room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft, calming color and filling it with baby furniture and toys. It was a labor of love, a tangible expression of our hopes and dreams for our growing family. The day our baby was born was one of the most beautiful and emotional days of our lives. Holding our child in my arms, I felt a profound sense of love and responsibility. Emily and I looked at each other, tears of joy streaming down our faces. "She did it," she whispered. "We've come so far." "Yes, we have," I replied, my heart full. "And this is just the beginning." Our baby brought a new dimension to our lives, filling our home with laughter, sleepless nights, and countless precious moments. Parenthood was challenging, but it also brought us closer together, deepening our bond and strengthening our commitment. As the years went by, we continued to navigate the ups and downs of life, always supporting each other and growing together. Our journey had been filled with pain and betrayal, but it had also been a story of resilience, forgiveness, and enduring love. Looking back, I realized that the challenges we faced had shaped us into the couple we were. We had learned to communicate, to trust, and to love each other in deeper ways. Our story was not perfect, but it was ours, and it was beautiful in its own unique way. As I watched Emily play with our child in the backyard one sunny afternoon, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Our journey had been long and difficult, but it had led us to a place of happiness and fulfillment, and I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together with love and strength.